Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Hey guys, it's your girl Nicole, and I just want to take a few moments to say thank you for listening to the Oh Hell No podcast. Please continue to subscribe. I would really love to get some feedback on some of the episodes. Let me know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, if anything is inspiring to you. That would really be appreciated. But I do love that you guys are listening. I do get, responses every once in a while where people are like, oh, I love the podcast, and it really makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. I think it's just really important to share these stories with you guys because it's not the easiest thing figuring out where you belong in this world, what your purpose is. And sometimes we can draw inspiration from other people's stories where they figured it out. And, whatever the formula was for them, it can really help you to know that, hey, you're on the right track and you'll have a breakthrough at some point. So I just really love sharing these stories with everyone and also meeting all these amazing people doing amazing things. So the episode that you're about to hear is an author. Her name is Diane, and she shares some really insightful information with us on how writing can help with depression and mental illness. And I just thought it was an important episode to share with people because, as we know lately, it seems like a trend that more and more young people are taking their lives. So whenever we can, bring someone on the show that can shed some light on how we can help to alleviate some stress and, issues, I think it's definitely worth exploring and listening to. So it's a very short episode, but I hope you guys enjoy it. And please continue to listen, support the podcast, drop me a note, follow me on Instagram. Let me know if you have any topics that you'd like to hear about or anything that you'd like to share, or even if you'd like to be a guest on the show. Please definitely reach out to me and let me know, guys. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today we have Diane, who is an author and a life coach, and she has written a book called Write for Recovery. Welcome, Diane. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, thank you to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. So the first question I have is, how long have you been a life coach?
Oh, well, I've taught therapeutic writing for about 10 years off and on. I also do other things in the arts. So I took off a year or two to publish a novel and to direct something. Part of what I teach is that being creative really heals your soul.
I can see how that can work. So
uplifts your spirit.
Yeah, definitely. It really does. So when did you decide that you wanted to work with children specifically?
Well, I've worked with teens a lot. I haven't worked as much with young children, but I'm interested in doing so. I'm teaching, facilitating a workshop for homeless youth, ages 12 and up. And it just happened that way. I had young children, and I was just asked to teach at this prison for teenagers. And then I was asked to teach at a high school, and I was trained as a therapist. I didn't go on to get licensed, but I was trained for a year at 2 high schools. So I've worked with kids a lot.
From what you know of mental illness, is mental illness on a whole hereditary, or is it something that can develop? And can you tell us what are some different types of mental illnesses?
Well, I'm not a total expert on mental illnesses. It is, I think it's part nurture, part nature.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things are hereditary, but we're not doomed. And what was the second half of your question?
That's okay. I said if the mental illness was hereditary, and then can some mental illness just develop? Is it something that maybe if there's too much stress or maybe something really traumatic, can that bring on some sort of mental illness, or what would be considered a mental illness? I mean, based on your work or your training or whatever you know about mental illness and the patients that you've worked with, have you ever seen anything there's no case of mental illness in their family history, and maybe they have developed some sort of mental illness? I mean, okay, let me ask you this. Is depression considered mental illness, or is it is depression just something that develops from different events that take place?
Well, there's situational depression, which is from grief or specific, if you're being bullied, or specific situational things.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a clinical depression, which is serious and ongoing, and like you're depressed every day. And for that, I really suggest people go see a professional and get their child evaluated, because that is serious.
Yeah.
And then there's situational things that you can deal with, as a parent, by listening, by supporting your child. And there's various, like for depression, it's very important for a child to be able to express their feelings.
Yeah, definitely.
And talk to you about it, and not to, and sometimes depression in children manifests as anger or laziness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important not to be hard on them for that, because they may be depressed. They may be going through something that you don't know about.
Yeah.
So one of the things I suggest is to teach your child feeling words. You can get on the internet, I'm pretty sure if you Google feeling words,
Mm-hmm.
or emotional language, you can get a list of words like, there's subtle differences in the words we express our feelings, and kids don't always know all those words. And to be able to express it and put language to it is really important.
So what are some signs that we should look out for as parents that might indicate that our children might be depressed, or just not having a good time of, just everyday life, or just, maybe too stressed out?
Well, if they seem lazy or angry, if they have trouble getting out of bed, if they're not talking to you at all, if they display sadness or low mood similar to adults who are depressed,
Mm-hmm.
if you see mood changes or a feeling of hopelessness, all these are things that if it doesn't pass, you might want to get it assessed.
Right.
If they're irritable, if they've lost interest in things they used to have pleasure in for at least, if it's a week or two, but if it goes into longer than that, you might want to get it checked out.
So can you tell us some of the specific strategies that you have used to help children overcome depression and anxiety?
Well, one of the things is just to let them express their feelings. You can have them list what's going on with them. Make a list of the things that bother them, for example, just so they get it out of their system.
Mm-hmm.
And then the opposite of that is to have them list the things that make them feel good, or the good things that are happening in their life, or the positive things they've accomplished. One really good thing for a child that's depressed is to really encourage them and salute them when they do something positive, so that their efforts aren't unrewarded.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one, because even my daughter, she's 8. Whenever she does something, that she finds to be really exciting and she's proud of herself, she's always like, I did this. Aren't you proud of me? Aren't you proud? And I'm like, yes,
Exactly.
That's so great. That's a great job. So,
isn't that wonderful? And,
yeah.
and it's nice to have a kid, like, if they're writing, if they can write, have them write down all the great things about themselves.
Oh yeah, that's good. In my daughter's class, her teacher had an assignment like that, and she had the other students write something really nice about another student, and then that student got this paper with all these things from everyone in the class that they thought was great about them.
How wonderful.
I thought that was a great exercise. I've never seen that done. So I was just like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, that's a lovely exercise.
Yeah, so that definitely, I could see how that can boost them up and help them out. What are some things that we should avoid saying if we think our child is depressed or anxious?
Buck up, what's the matter with you? Anything that's negating what they're going through, like acknowledge their sadness, struggle, and say it's okay to be sad, or it's okay to be angry. Because if you try to squish it, it'll just fester.
Yeah, maybe turn into something a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So, the one thing
you don't want to punish their mistakes or their lack of progress if they're in a depressed state and you think they're lazy. You just want to recognize and praise the small accomplishment and modify your expectations when it's a stressful time or a depressing time.
Another thing that I've just been noticing is just how many young people are actually committing suicide today in this day and age, and I'm just so baffled by that.
Isn't that frightening?
It is. It's like, first of of all, how do they even know how to carry these acts out? I mean, I know the internet is just really,
Exactly.
overwhelming with a lot of information, but then to actually do it, you know what I mean? At 8 years old, 7 years old, to hang yourself, I mean,
It's just heartbreaking.
it really is. But what do you think is leading, these kids to actually do that? Is it really depression? Do you think it's like a clinical depression? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, what I've read a lot is some of it is due to bullying.
Yeah.
And so you want to have open discussions with your kids and find out if they're being bullied. And some of it's due to the expectations. The one when my children were young, there was a 11-year-old that committed suicide at this. He was at this school that had extraordinary expectations of the kids. They just put too much on them, homework and to achieve at such a young age. And I think we do that to our kids sometimes. But the bullying is really scary with the internet and the internet, you can go on Facebook and see if you're not popular, you can see all your friends having parties and you're not going to them. And it's really the environment, the social media environment is really frightening for kids, I think. And it's good to put boundaries on that.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because that's terrible. I didn't even think about what you just said about people having parties and not inviting you, and then you really feeling like an outsider. And
you see the parties on Facebook and you see the kids, congratulating each other and enjoying,
So you have worked with students in prison. Did they end up in prison because of maybe something they did relating to depression and or anxiety, or are they there for something totally unrelated, and then because they're there they become depressed, and that's how you end up working with them? Can you tell us a little bit?
Most of the crimes the kids committed were crimes that had been committed on them when they were young. So in other words, they were repeating what they had learned.
Oh, okay.
And I learned that from their when a lot of the teenagers were in there for sexual crimes.
Oh, wow.
But then I found out through their writing that they had been abused as children themselves. So it was enlightening for them to put two and two together for the first time and realize the cause and effect.
Wow.
And I think that's really liberating too, because when you realize it, you can break the chain.
So once they do the writing exercises, then how do you think that helps them? Just like you said, maybe connecting the dots, but then what else? What do they do after, they're able to get their feelings out and write this stuff down? Do you think that that's just the beginning of the healing process and then there's a lot of stuff that has to follow? Or do you think they have to continue to write for most of their life? Because as we know, writing is, really a good way of therapy. And a lot of people keep journals as adults. So,
and I believe in getting the negative history out of your system once or twice, but not dwelling on it and not continuously moaning in your journal. That's why I developed exercises that also help you create more mindfulness in your life, develop more consistent spiritual good habit, integrate more creativity into your life. I do it and create your ideal life. I have exercises where I have people envision their ideal parent, their safe place, their ideal life. I'm not going to go into details on each of those, but it's creating resources for yourself that feed you. So it's positive moving forward. You get it out of your system and then you look towards solutions.
Okay. So tell us about your book, Write for Recovery.
Well, I am a writer and I have a degree in creative writing, a master's in creative writing and a master's in psychology. So I put the two together and used creative writing exercises geared towards healing. And my book, it talks a little bit about the history of therapeutic writing, but then it's mainly like memoir and folk wisdom that I've gathered. And the body of the book is the exercises, though. It's all just there to couch the exercises. So it's exercises you can do at home. Some are appropriate for children. Some aren't. It was written for adults.
Oh, okay.
But it's because journaling sometimes gets to be a job and not a journey.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like being told just to go journal isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
But these creative writing exercises, you can get stuff you can get beyond your intellect. They kind of trick you out of your mind into a more creative space. And I always tell people, and this works for kids too, that they can write as fast when writing down your feelings, write as fast or doing these exercises, write as fast as you can. Don't worry about spelling or punctuation or grammar or even complete sentences. So you just get the feelings on the paper. And then sometimes you get beyond your intellect into your subconscious or higher self or into a place where you write something down and you read it and you go, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that's what I was feeling. So sometimes you surprise yourself by what you write. And that's the most fun for me in both the therapeutic writing and even in my novel writing. When I get on a roll, I sometimes look back and I go, wow, I didn't plan that.
So when did you decide that you wanted to become a writer? Like, is it something that you've always loved, or?
Yes, I had a little journal, a little diary with a lot when I was a kid. Probably I started when I was about 7 or 8, and I always wrote. And then at some point I got sick of just writing in my journal and started writing short stories. I guess right before my kids were born, a while back. And then I went on to write novels. And writing is always writing. I was an actress as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
both of those arts really gave me a sense of expression. I'll tell you, my first acting job was I was 12. I was a child actor. And it was a role called The Brat. And in my house, my parents were very strict, and I was not allowed to express any anger at all. But in the show, they wore protection shin pads, and I was supposed to kick people. And I got to express anger that, and be a brat. And I realized I fell in love with acting and art in general because in writing, in acting, in painting, in music, you can express things that you can't safely express in real life, either because they're too hard to define or because they're not permissible, appropriate, or because it just doesn't feel safe. But in art, you can do it. So it's very liberating. And my goal in my workshops is to get people, it doesn't matter if it's just writing, is to get people to do something creative for 15 minutes a day, because it really does lift your spirits.
Yeah, it definitely does. So that's so interesting. So you were always into the arts, and you've been doing that since you've been a young girl, and it just followed up into adulthood. And then when you went to college, you did this, you said psychology major and then another like writing major.
I did that as an older adult.
Oh.
When I was college age, I was acting. I went to college for a year. I was a psychology major, but then I got a film and I dropped out. So I went back as an adult when my kids were young and got the degrees. But just talking about the arts and stuff, if your kid is depressed or anxious, that's one thing, is to give them some craft or something, to do that, collage or play an instrument or something that's creative, because I really do believe in the healing power of the arts.
Yeah. I think that is definitely good. Like if you draw, paint, that could definitely be a way to get out repressed feelings or just things that are just stay bottled up in your mind. I definitely encourage that with my daughter.
And I always say, if you obsess or you have negative thoughts, I always say, if you don't use your imagination, it will use you.
That's a good one.
So, so you want to make good use of it.
So, I love talking about, so the whole concept of my podcast is really talking about people finding their passion, doing, what they love. So it just interests me how you got to this place where you're doing what you're doing today. Do you remember what led you to this or why you're doing this? And clearly you're passionate about it, but do you remember what threw you into this?
I think it just evolved. I'm not sure exactly. I was always writing, and so I always believed that art saves lives, and so it made sense with both those degrees to use creative writing exercises like the ones they use in MFA programs and design them with psychological principles in mind. I just find it really fulfilling. I've done things like act and direct and things that were more showbiz oriented and stuff. But this is my opportunity to contribute because I've seen it really affect people's lives in a really nice way.
Wow.
So it feels good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So so you feel like you are living in your purpose by doing this, working
Yes.
with people and helping them to figure it out.
Very much so. I find it very fulfilling.
Good. That's amazing. I love that. This is the Oh Hell No podcast. On this podcast, the Oh Hell No is the moments in our life that kind of just, makes us stop and say, oh hell no. It could be something good. It could be something bad. We want you to share something that has happened along your journey that you can remember that sticks in your mind that you say that was an oh hell no moment for sure. And again, it could be a positive thing, it could be something that you never expected that happened and turned out to be great or turned out to be not so great.
Could it be oh hell no years instead of moments?
Well, you can wrap it up. You can tell us an oh hell no year. Like for this year, this is what happened and it was an oh hell no year.
Well, I had an oh hell no year after my divorce, and I had another bump in the road, and I was down for the count, and it was like, oh hell no, I'm resilient. I'm not going to let this get me down for the count. I'm getting up and I'm doing life.
That's right.
And luckily I am resilient and I am still doing it.
That's great.
So I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah. You didn't let the divorce, break you.
No.
Good for you. That's awesome. So is this book available yet or are you still working on it?
It just came out yesterday.
Oh, that is amazing. Great.
Yeah, it's Right for Recovery, Exercises for Heart, Mind, and Spirit. Okay. And my name's Diane Sherry Case.
Okay.
Sherry Case is my last name.
All right. And where can we get this book?
Unhyphenated. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And you can go to my website, writeforrecovery.com, write as in write with a pen. And there are workshops and daily prompts available.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Diane. It was a pleasure speaking with you and learning about what you do and how you're contributing and living in your purpose. And we appreciate everything that you do.
Oh, thank you so much.